My mother was born to a middle-class family in Łodzi. Her father was an agent, he would sell like a middleman, and my grandmother was a housewife, and they had lived quite well. A very generous and lovely woman who always looked after people who were much poorer than her. So it was nothing to make Ross's macaron and to deliver it to a family who needed it, or to help with children next door, or to do things like that. They had a maid who was Florcia, who came from the country and helped with the big jobs. It was a big family. There were 6 children in my mother's family. She was the middle child. Older than her was Jan's mother, Paula, who was a great intellect. Older than her was Jakub, who was the Zionist, and went on Hachsharein near Zduńskiej Woli and migrated to Palestine in 1939. Older than him was Eliyahu, who was the naughty boy, who must have been brilliant. Like in another time, if he was born in the 60s, his life would have looked very different. So he was a womanizer and very clever and always in trouble. And when he was 14, the famous family story was that he ran away to join the merchant marines. And the police picked him up, and my grandparents had to pay Majontek a fortune to have him released from the police. And my mother says she overheard the conversation. I think my mother was very young, maybe 7. And she said she made a promise at the age of 7 that she would never do anything to upset her parents ever after what her big brother did. But he was the most loved member of the family. He had a great sense of humour, and he was actually a very good person. And my mother talks about how when she did a beautiful painting of a rooster in school, the school caught fire and he went through the flames to bring back the picture. So during the war he was in the army in Poland, and then I think something happened and they had to smuggle him out of the country, and he arrived in Palestine somehow before 1939. So both he, Eliyahu, and my mother's second brother, Jakub, joined the British Army and served in Palestine and in Egypt, so through the Arab territories during the Second World War. Paula, being a communist, crossed the Green Line into Russia and survived in Tashkent, starving, because they all starved. And there her first husband was murdered. She married her husband just before, sometime in September 1939, and then they left, they migrated, and they continued their work in Russia. My mother was the oldest one then at home and went into the ghetto with her parents, her grandparents on her father's side, so family on her father's side was Zlotogórski and Wolrauch, and they were in ghetto together, and her parents, herself, her next brother Abram, and her little brother Pinush. She'd always wanted to be a nurse, which in their family would not have been okay, but during the war she was a paediatric nurse. I think it was, I've got the name of the hospital that she worked in. So she was working in the hospital during the Sperre. My mother was in Auschwitz and then a number of concentration camps very quickly. Her mother was murdered in Auschwitz. Her little brother was murdered in Auschwitz. And Momek, her brother, and her father were sent to the mines, to the quarry, to the stone mines, and had to break stones. I think that her father died there or died on the march out. She was sent, her final stop was Potsdam, so she was on the famous train that was on the way to Potsdam that was bombed. And so she fled from the train with the other survivors and came back to Poland through Germany. And in Germany she was taken in by the farmers, German farmers, and she says, at first they helped us survive in the barns, and then as the Russians came in, they put us in their beds, in their houses. So fair enough, everybody's got some terrible story. Anyway, she eventually made it back to Łódź and worked for an organisation that helped people find each other. So because she'd been a nurse, So she was in an administrative position and she helped people find brothers, sisters, mothers, if there was anybody. And of course there was not many. And that's where she met my father. So my father's story is a little bit different and a little bit unusual in that his family were stateless Russians who came to Poland between the wars and after the Russian Revolution. He had 2 older brothers who were much older, an older sister who won a scholarship to the Conservatorium of Music in Łódź, who was an opera singer. And I think I only know that he never spoke about it. He could not talk about his family. He had a younger brother, Max, and I don't know what Max's story was. I'm just assuming that he was murdered, but he never spoke about it. He could never talk about his family. He said to me when he was dying, if he had known that all of his family would be murdered, he would have made sure that he was killed as well. So as the Nazis moved into Poland, a lot of families moved east to Lvov, and he did that with his older brother. And his older brother and he were in a library, and they were recruited to the Polish-Russian army. And my father had an uncle in Moscow. He was sent to Moscow by train with his brother. And the brother somewhere en route got off the train and never saw his brother again. And that haunted him his whole life. He got to Moscow, he did his training, and so he was in part of the communist army, and he fought in Stalingrad. And it's in Stalingrad that he could have got himself killed, because it's such a terrible battle. And when he came back to Poland, everybody had been murdered. So there was nobody for him. And he devoted himself to my mother. And they settled in Poland, and he was a career captain in the Polish-Russian army. By that time it was probably the Polish army, and Kielce happened. The pogrom in Kielce, and my mother looked at my father and said, I'm gone. I'm not staying here. I don't want to be here anymore. If you want to stay and do army, that's your business, but I'm gone. He went to Paris. My mother went as a nurse and worked as a nurse, but my father, it was very difficult to make a living. It was very, very, very hard, and there's a famous family story where they didn't have any food. It was immediately after the war, and my father was always the optimist and my mother was terrible pessimist. And on this occasion, my mother said, I don't know what we're going to do. That was despairing. It was 10 o'clock at night. They hadn't had anything to eat. And my father said, it's not midnight yet. And then there was a knock on the door. My uncle Mumek had somehow been involved, I don't know what sort of business. He'd sent money for them. And they got $20 at that time, which must have been a fortune. And they had money for bread for the next day. In 1949 or 1950, my father's friend Adolek Khan made contact with my parents and managed to get the papers to move to Australia. My father was a socialist, not a communist, but believed in social justice, and said to my mother, in Australia, if you're honest and a good person, you can make a living. You don't have to be fancy, but you can get work and you can live, and live better than here. And Mama said, I'm not going there. It's like, where are you sending me? To the other ends of the earth? Like, why would I do that? Why would I go there? Anyway, the decision was made that they would go. They came with the Gomo family, the Alta family, and my family, and they stayed close forever. Then they arrived in Australia and became very close family with the Prince family and with the Con family. So all of those people sort of stayed in loose contact. When they arrived in Australia, they're very poor, you can imagine. But they all just worked really hard, and there are very funny stories about buying chickens that they wanted to cook for dinner, and then killing the chicken and not being able to, looking at the body of the chicken on the dinner table and not being able to eat it because the chicken had been a pet, and picking up a dog off the street, which was a wild Australian dog called a dingo. Like, really, really very funny stories. A lot of the very colourful characters of Australian history now post-war were Jewish, and the big philanthropists and writers and